Picture this. You're sitting at your desk on a totally normal Wednesday afternoon, right? You pick up the phone, fully expecting some routine call. Maybe someone's running late for their shift. But instead, the woman on the other end of the line sounds completely different. There's this sudden, chilling shift in her tone. She is absolutely terrified. The totally boring normalcy of that August afternoon in 2005 is just instantly shattered when she tells you, her voice literally trembling, that she needs to hang up right now and call 911. And guys, this is the exact real-time moment a mother realized her daughter was missing, plunging us right into a really terrifying emergency.
So, welcome back to The Explainer. I'm genuinely so compelled to guide you through this one today because it's as fascinating as it is heartbreaking. We are going to step directly into the shoes of the lead investigator here, NYPD Detective Michael Kenny. We'll be decoding the actual mechanics of how this complex investigation unfolded, untangling a pretty massive web of intense family dynamics, cultural pressures, and digital footprints to solve the tragic mystery of 18-year-old Eliza Parsy.
Section 1. A sudden shift to mystery.
Okay, so it's about 7:30 p.m. Eliza's mother, Sema, gets back to the large, quiet home they share over on Staten Island, but she can't even get inside. The front door only opens a couple of inches. So she basically has to force her way in, and right away, she sees why. A massive, heavy mirror has been shoved right in front of the door to barricade it. And when she finally flips on the lights, her safe space is just completely destroyed. Furniture flipped over, cabinets flung open, papers thrown literally everywhere. Naturally, her immediate thought is, we've been robbed. But then comes the second, far more panic-inducing thought. Her daughter, Eliza, had been home alone all day.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the physical evidence completely contradicts that initial break-in theory. When Detective Kenny arrives, he definitely sees the ransacked rooms. But he also notices that all the highly valuable stuff, we're talking the TV, the stereo system, they're just sitting there, completely untouched, right out in the open. This points to a terrifying lack of motive for a standard burglary, you know? Whoever broke in wasn't after electronics. And then upstairs, behind a locked bedroom door, officers made a grim discovery. They found Eliza's body. The scene was bizarrely staged. The mattress had been entirely pulled off the bed frame and dropped over her, with a pillow placed over her face.
Section 2. Eliza's secret double life.
To really understand this case, we have to talk about Eliza. She was an 18-year-old high school grad working as a clerk at a moving company. She was saving up for college, dreaming of a big career in the fashion industry. But she was dealing with a massive internal conflict. You see, her family was strictly Orthodox Jewish, and they held very rigid expectations about who she could and couldn't date. In fact, the family pressure over her high school boyfriend, a Muslim teen named Hassan, was so intense that it actually forced them to break up. So, how did Eliza handle this? She created a completely secret double life. She turned to online dating, she started messaging guys way outside her tight-knit community, and she even began sneaking dates in through the back door of her house while her mom was out at work.
Section 3. The ransacked crime scene.
Going back to the immediate aftermath, Detective Kenny had to make some pretty grim observations. Eliza was found without any clothes on, lying on the floor with a towel bunched up underneath her. But here's the baffling part. There were absolutely no visible indicators for a cause of death. No bullet holes, no obvious knife wounds, just a few tiny drops of blood on that towel. When you look at the missing clothes, the weird mattress placement, and that bit of blood, Kenny's initial horrifying gut reaction was that this was a violent sexual assault that ended in murder. So he ordered his techs to collect literally every possible bodily fluid to try and lock down the killer's DNA.
Section 4. Suspects and a ticking clock.
Now, we're all used to true crime stories where the investigation drags on for months, right? But here, they were up against a very strict religious ticking clock. According to Orthodox Jewish custom, a body has to be buried within 24 hours of death. So imagine the pressure. This forced the medical examiner to work at absolute breakneck speed to process the victim, do the full autopsy, and gather all that crucial forensic evidence before the funeral, which had to happen the very next day. Okay, let's dive into Kenny's methodical elimination process, because he had to move fast. Suspect number 1, Hassan, the ex-boyfriend. Eliza's family pointed the finger at him literally right away. They noted he'd recently snuck into the house uninvited and just watched Eliza sleep. Hassan fully admitted to doing this, but claimed he just desperately wanted to talk to her to win her back. Kenny also looked into a crew of landscapers working right next door. And honestly, to their credit, both Hassan and the landscapers voluntarily handed over their DNA samples.
But here is where we hit a massive reality check about the era. We have to remember 2005 forensic technology. Today, we're so used to that instant CSI-style result where the computer just bangs with a match. Back then, processing DNA and blood evidence took weeks. So, even though Detective Kenny had incredibly strong suspicions, especially regarding Hassan, who obviously had a motive and a known history of sneaking in, he had exactly zero hard evidence to actually hold anyone. He basically had to watch his prime suspect just walk out the door.
Section 5. Following the digital trail. While waiting on the science, the NYPD Computer Crime Unit started digging into Eliza's secret digital life. IT specialists managed to crack open her computer, and boom, they found a massive lead buried in her dating site messages. Just one day before she was killed, Eliza was chatting with a guy named Jonathan. The messages explicitly laid out a plan for Jonathan to come over while her mom was at work. Eliza even typed out that she would leave the back door unlocked so he could sneak in unnoticed. And guess what? That perfectly matched the unforced entry point the police found at the crime scene. At this point, it felt like the case was blown wide open. But as we often see in these investigations, we hit what's called a red herring, a totally misleading clue. When Kenny finally tracked down Jonathan, the guy didn't run, he didn't lawyer up, he fully cooperated. He admitted, yeah, I snuck in the back door, we had consensual sex the day before the murder, and then he left. Jonathan had a rock-solid alibi for the actual day of the killing, and he voluntarily gave his DNA. So what looked like the absolute smoking gun turned into a hugely frustrating dead end. Section 6. A tragic family betrayal. Then, the medical examiner finally calls Kenny with those delayed DNA results, and it cuts through all the secrets. They had 2 completely distinct DNA profiles. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it breaks down. The semen collected at the scene, a perfect match for Jonathan, which proved they had consensual sex a day prior, exactly like he said. But crucially, the skin cells they scraped from underneath Eliza's fingernails from when she was fighting for her life did not match Jonathan, and they didn't match Hassan either. They matched someone who had literally been at the crime scene loudly demanding the police find the killer. It was Eliza's own 27-year-old half-brother, Raviv. Suddenly, the devastating truth comes fully into the light. Raviv wasn't driven by some anger over his sister's secret dating life. No, his true motive was just pure greed. He was stuck running the family's failing kosher cookie business, totally exhausted from living in his in-laws' basement. He knew his mother had recently gotten a pretty sizable divorce settlement, so he snuck in through the back door to steal the cash. But when Eliza unexpectedly walked out of the shower and caught him red-handed, he panicked. He tackled her and he suffocated his own sister just to keep her quiet. All of that staging, throwing the mattress over her, leaving the towel, trashing the room, Raviv did all of that specifically to make it look like a botched burglary and a sexual assault. He was desperately trying to throw the police off his trail, but you can't argue with DNA evidence. Faced with the science, his whole staged crime scene completely fell apart. Raviv ultimately pled guilty to first-degree manslaughter, and the judge handed down an 18-year prison sentence. It is just a staggering conclusion to a really deeply layered investigation, right? It leaves us with this haunting realization about how easily an investigation can be pulled in totally wrong directions. Which brings us to a pretty provocative question to leave you with today. How did Eliza's desperate attempts to hide her secret dating life from her family inadvertently create the perfect smokescreen, distracting everyone from the fatal, terrible threat that was actually waiting inside her own home? It's a deeply tragic irony, but it highlights exactly why detectives absolutely have to follow the hard evidence over their initial assumptions.
Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this breakdown gave you a clear, comprehensive look at such a complex and heartbreaking narrative. See you next time.